I want you to picture two versions of your life, running simultaneously. Right now.
Version 1. You are standing in the middle of a maze. The roads twist and turn in every direction. They double back on themselves. They lead nowhere. And at every turn, a sign. Overthinking. What-ifs. Regrets. Fear.
And you are standing in the center of it, completely overwhelmed, not knowing which direction to move. Not even sure if moving is possible. Not even sure anymore which direction you originally intended to go.
And this maze, it was built by your brain, automatically, over years, from every worry you ever absorbed, every mistake you ever made, every imagined future that frightened you, every regret that would not release. Version 2. You are walking down a clear, open road. Sunlight ahead, the path visible and direct. On either side, signs pointing toward things you consciously chose. Focus. Action. Presence. Growth.
Same person, same life, same brain. Completely different relationship with what the brain produces. The difference is not intelligence, not circumstances, not luck, not talent.
The difference is one thing. Whether you are living inside the maze your brain built automatically, or whether you have developed the capacity to step outside it and choose your own direction.
Today, we examine the maze. We understand how it was built, and we learn, specifically, practically, how to step outside it.
In English, with real understanding. And everything you need to stop being run by your brain and start directing it instead.
Stay with us. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Speak Unstoppable, the podcast where we help you speak English naturally and confidently through real, honest conversations.
I'm John.
And I'm Maria. So happy you're here with us today.
This episode is for B1 to B2 learners, intermediate to upper intermediate level English.
Before we continue, please subscribe to Speak Unstoppable right now. 1 tap. New episodes every single day. We are here for you every single day with conversations that grow your English and your understanding of your own mind.
Subscribed? Good. Now let's talk about something that might be the most practically important conversation about your own thinking that you have ever had.
How are you feeling today, John?
Honestly? Directed. I know where I am going today, which is exactly what this episode is about. Developing the capacity to know where you are going, rather than simply following where the brain leads.
Same. Thank you for being here. Let's go. Okay, I want to ask you a question that most people never ask themselves with genuine honesty.
What question?
Who is actually making the decisions in your life?
You, obviously. You make your own decisions.
But do you? Or does your brain make them automatically based on patterns established years ago, based on fears and stories that may no longer reflect your actual situation, and then present them to you as if they were consciously chosen?
The person who avoids a difficult conversation they know needs to happen, did they consciously decide to avoid it? Or did their brain's conflict avoidance pattern produce the avoidance before a deliberate decision could even form?
The person who overthinks every decision until the opportunity passes, did they decide to overthink? Or did the brain's threat scanning function produce the spiral automatically, and the person simply went with it?
The person who stays in a situation they know is not right for them. Did they choose to stay? Or did their brain's loss aversion system, its powerful preference for the familiar over the uncertain, make the choice before a conscious evaluation could occur?
Most people, if they answer this with genuine honesty, are not making their decisions as consciously as they believe. Their brain, running its patterns, its default responses, its automatic protective functions, is making most of the decisions and presenting them as choices.
And the difference between the person who is run by their brain and the person who directs their brain is not intelligence. It is not willpower. It is understanding. The specific understanding of how the brain operates automatically and what it takes to override the automatic with the intentional.
Today, we build that understanding and the capacity that follows from it.
Let's start with the mechanism. Because the maze was not built maliciously, the brain did not build it to trap you. It built it with entirely protective intentions.
Every pattern in the maze, the overthinking, the regrets, the what-ifs, the fear, it was originally a response to something real.
The brain is fundamentally a prediction machine. Its primary function, before thinking, before creativity, before problem solving, is to predict threats and prepare responses. To keep you safe.
And it learns from experience. Every time something painful happened, every time something went wrong, every time you were hurt or embarrassed or failed at something significant, the brain registered it.
And it built a response pattern. If this kind of situation arises again, respond this way. Avoid this, fear this, anticipate this before it arrives.
And the patterns that were built from early experiences, they were genuinely useful in the specific contexts where they formed.
The child who learned that conflict leads to pain, the avoidance pattern they developed was intelligent. It protected them.
The person who failed at something important and publicly, the overthinking pattern they developed was protective. It tried to prevent another failure through more thorough preparation.
The person who experienced loss, the fear pattern that formed around attachment, was genuinely a response to real danger.
Every pattern, a genuine attempt at protection. Built from real experience. Designed to keep you safe.
But here's what the brain cannot easily do on its own. It cannot automatically update the pattern when the situation changes, when you are no longer a child, when the specific threat has passed, when the context that required the pattern no longer exists.
The pattern continues running. Even in situations where it is no longer needed, even in situations where it is actively unhelpful, automatically, reliably, without your permission.
And that is the maze, not built to trap you, but trapping you nonetheless. Because protection that has become disproportionate, it is no longer protection. It is limitation.
The maze has 4 specific signs, and each one, once clearly named, becomes far more visible and far more interruptible.
Pattern 1. Overthinking.
Overthinking is the brain's threat detection system operating in a non-threat context. It was designed for genuine dangers. Scan exhaustively for every possible risk. Do not commit to action until all risks are assessed.
But the brain applies this same system to situations that are not genuine threats. A decision about your career, a conversation that needs to happen, a creative project, a relationship.
And the scanning continues. Without resolution, because these situations do not have the kind of complete safety information that would tell the threat detection system It is safe to proceed.
Uncertainty is the brain's threat detection system's permanent condition of activation, and the uncertain situations of human life, which are almost all of them, never fully resolve the uncertainty.
So the overthinking continues, cycling through the same material, looking for the certainty that will allow action, never finding it. Because certainty, in the situations that matter most, does not exist in advance. It only exists after you act and receive real information.
And while you are in the overthinking maze, the actual situation is not being addressed. The decision is not being made. The opportunity is not being pursued. Life is occurring outside the maze while you are inside it.
Pattern 2. Regrets.
Regret is the brain's retrospective analysis function. Looking back at past decisions, examining the moment where a different choice could have been made, trying to understand the causation. What produced this outcome? What could have been different?
And this is a genuinely useful function. In appropriate doses, for a limited time, it produces learning. It extracts information from painful experiences that can guide future decisions.
But when regret becomes a permanent address, when the brain returns to the same past moments repeatedly without extracting new information, it has stopped learning and started looping.
The loop is the brain looking for an exit that does not exist. Because the past cannot be changed, and no amount of examining it changes it. The only information it can still provide, you have already received.
And the energy spent in the regret loop, it is energy that belongs in the present, in the actual situations that can still be influenced, in the relationships that are still active, in the work that is still possible.
Pattern 3. What-ifs.
What-ifs are the brain's anticipatory anxiety system, scanning the future for possible negative outcomes, constructing detailed scenarios of what could go wrong, preparing the emotional and behavioral response in advance.
And again, in genuine dangerous contexts, this is useful. If a real threat is approaching, anticipating it and preparing a response is intelligent.
But the brain applies this system to situations that are not genuine threats. The presentation next week. The conversation next month. The life decision that is still months away.
And the what-if scenarios it constructs, they are almost always worse than the actual situations that materialize. Because the brain's threat detection system is calibrated toward worst case rather than realistic. It overestimates danger as a survival strategy.
So you experience anxiety about scenarios that are highly unlikely, and this anxiety shapes behavior, causing avoidance, causing delay, causing silence, based on threats that exist only in the imagination.
Pattern 4. Fear.
Proportionate fear, fear that matches the actual level of genuine risk, is one of the brain's most valuable tools. It focuses attention. It elevates performance in genuine emergencies. It correctly signals, this matters. Be careful.
But the fear in the maze is almost always disproportionate. It is attached to situations where the actual risk does not warrant that level of activation.
The fear of making a mistake in English. The fear of being judged in a presentation. The fear of attempting something new. These carry real anxiety, but they do not carry genuine danger.
Nobody is harmed by an imperfect sentence. No one's survival is threatened by an unsuccessful attempt at something new. The stakes that the fear implies, they are not the actual stakes.
And understanding the disproportionality, the gap between the fear's signal and the actual risk, it is one of the most powerful tools for reducing the fear's control over behavior.
Okay, the open road. Because the image shows both the maze and the road. And the road is not a metaphor. It is a description of what happens when the brain is directed rather than followed.
The open road has 4 specific qualities, and each one is the direct opposite and the direct antidote to one of the maze patterns.
Focus, the directed antidote to overthinking.
Where overthinking scatters attention across every possibility, past, future, imagined, feared, focus concentrates attention on what is actually present. On the real task, the real decision, the real person, the real moment.
And focus is not a talent you either have or lack. It is a practice. A repeated choice to return attention to the present after the maze attempts to pull it elsewhere.
Not fighting the pull, not suppressing the overthinking thought, just noticing it arrived. And returning attention to what is actually here.
Each return is a repetition of the focus practice, and repetitions, accumulated across days and weeks, build the neural pathway that makes the next return easier, faster, more automatic.
Action, the directed antidote to the what-if spiral.
Where what-if catastrophizing paralyzes, constructing vivid scenarios of failure before action is even attempted, action provides the only information that can dissolve the catastrophe. Real information. From the actual attempt.
And the real outcome of an attempt, however imperfect, is almost always less frightening than the what-if scenario suggested. Because the what-if scenario was constructed by a threat detection system calibrated toward worst case.
Reality is almost always more manageable than imagination. But only action produces the evidence that demonstrates this.
Presence, the directed antidote to regret.
Where regret keeps the mind in the past, replaying what cannot be changed, presence keeps the mind in the only moment where anything is still possible. Now.
And presence is not the absence of memory or planning. It is the quality of being fully engaged with what is actually here, not mentally in last year's conversation, not anticipating next month's difficulty. Here, in this actual moment, with this actual person, in this actual situation.
Growth, the natural result of the other 3.
Not growth as a performance or an achievement. Growth as the natural consequence of directing your brain rather than following it. Of engaging fully with your actual life rather than with the maze surrounding it.
When you focus, you do your work more completely. When you act, you gather real experience. When you are present, you actually inhabit your relationships and your moments. And from these, growth happens. Not as a goal, but as an outcome. Okay, and here is the part that most people find confusing. If the open road is better, if focus, action, presence, and growth produce better outcomes than the maze patterns, why does the brain resist going there?
Because the brain's primary loyalty is not to your happiness or your growth. Its primary loyalty is to your perceived safety. And the maze, however limiting, feels safer than the open road.
The overthinking feels like due diligence, like careful preparation. Leaving it and acting feels reckless.
The regret loop feels like learning, like taking mistakes seriously. Releasing it and moving forward feels like not caring.
The what-if spiral feels like foresight, like responsible preparation for difficulty. Stopping it and acting feels naive.
The fear feels like accurate warning, like a reliable signal about genuine danger. Overriding it feels dangerous.
And so, the brain, even when the maze is limiting you, protects it. Because the maze is familiar. And familiar, to the brain's safety system, is safe.
Even when familiar is clearly harmful. Even when the maze is costing you far more than the open road could. The brain's preference for the familiar is powerful enough to override even clear evidence that the current pattern is not serving you.
And understanding this resistance, knowing that it is the brain doing its job, protecting the familiar, it changes the relationship with the resistance.
You are not fighting weakness. You are overriding a protective instinct that has become disproportionate. And overriding with understanding is always more effective than fighting.
Okay, practical. Because understanding the maze is important, and stepping outside it requires specific practices.
Practice 1. Observe the pattern without becoming it.
This is the most fundamental shift, and the most difficult to maintain in the early stages.
Most people, when a maze pattern activates, become the pattern. They are the overthinking. They are the regret. They are the fear.
But there is another relationship available. Observing the pattern, noticing it, naming it, seeing it clearly without becoming it. Without following it automatically.
I am having the thought that this will go wrong. I am in the regret loop about that conversation. I notice fear about this attempt.
Each of these phrasings creates distance. Not suppression, you are not pushing the thought away. Observation, you are watching it from slightly outside. And that distance is where the choice to step outside the maze lives.
Practice 2. Name the specific pattern.
Labeling activates the prefrontal cortex, the rational, evaluative brain, and prefrontal activation reduces the intensity of the limbic response, the fear, the anxiety, the emotional charge.
This is not a metaphor. It is a neurological mechanism. Naming a difficult emotional state measurably reduces its intensity, because naming requires the evaluative brain to engage, and the evaluative brain and the fear response cannot operate at full intensity simultaneously.
So when the maze pattern appears, name it, out loud if possible. This is overthinking. This is the regret loop. This is catastrophizing. This is disproportionate fear.
The naming alone reduces the pattern's power and creates the space for the redirect.
Practice 3. The present moment anchor.
When the maze has you, when you are in the past or the imagined future, the most direct return to the open road is through the physical present.
Your senses are always in the present. They cannot be anywhere else. And redirecting attention to sensory experience, what you can see, hear, feel physically in this moment, it pulls the mind back from wherever the maze was taking it.
Not as an avoidance of what needs to be addressed, but as a restoration of perspective, a return to the only moment where anything can actually be done.
Practice 4. Act before the spiral completes.
This is perhaps the most powerful practice, and the most counterintuitive for people who have been living in the maze.
Do not wait for the overthinking to reach its conclusion. Do not wait for certainty to arrive. Do not wait until the fear has been fully resolved.
Act with the uncertainty still present, with the fear still present, with the spiral still running. But begin anyway.
Because the spiral never reaches a conclusion that authorizes action. It is not designed to reach that conclusion. It is designed to keep scanning for threats, and it will continue scanning indefinitely, unless you take the action that interrupts it with real information. Let's apply this directly. Because every single maze pattern operates in English learning, and understanding how, it changes how you approach the language.
The overthinking maze in English. Analyzing the grammatical structure of a sentence in such detail that by the time you have finished the analysis, the conversational moment has passed.
The regret maze in English. Replaying a mistake from 2 weeks ago. Re-experiencing the embarrassment. Going over what you should have said, without extracting any new learning that you have not already extracted.
The what-if maze in English. Constructing detailed scenarios of failure before the attempt. What if I make a mistake? What if they do not understand me? What if my pronunciation reveals my level?
And none of these imagined failures are as damaging as the what-if scenario suggests. The real outcomes of imperfect English attempts, the actual responses of actual people in actual conversations, they are almost always more manageable than the spiral implied.
The fear maze in English. The genuine physical reluctance before speaking. The avoidance of situations where English would be required. The preference for passive listening over the active production that actually builds fluency.
And the open road for English? Focus on what you want to communicate, not on the perfection of the communication. Action before certainty. Presence in the actual conversation rather than in the imagined judgment. Growth from every imperfect attempt.
The brain that runs automatically in the English maze, it does not improve. Because it never gathers the real information that only genuine attempts can provide.
The brain that steps outside the maze, that acts before certainty, that focuses on communication over perfection, that stays present in the actual exchange, it compounds. It strengthens the pathways. It builds toward the fluency that the maze was preventing.
Can I say something about what stepping outside the maze actually feels like the first time you genuinely do it?
Please.
It feels surprisingly ordinary, not dramatic, not a transformation, just a quiet sense of being here, in this actual moment, with this actual life.
Not the elaborately imagined catastrophe, not the replayed past conversation, not the what-if scenario that felt so compelling in the spiral. Just what is actually here.
And what is actually here, in most moments, for most people, is manageable, is genuinely okay, is not the catastrophe that the maze was constructing.
The maze amplifies. The present moment clarifies. And that clarity, the simple, unelaborated clarity of what is actually here, it is one of the most restorative experiences available.
And the more you practice returning to it, the more familiar it becomes. And the more familiar it becomes, the more natural the return from the maze.
Not because the maze disappears. It does not. The brain continues producing its patterns. That is its function.
But you develop the capacity to observe the pattern without becoming it, to name it without being consumed by it, to return to the present without drama, again and again.
And that capacity, that neurological skill of stepping outside the automatic, it is one of the most genuinely life-changing things a person can develop in any language. in any area of life.
You are not the maze. You are the one who can step outside it. And the stepping outside, it is always available. Right now.
Remember this. Your brain built the maze to protect you. But protection that has become disproportionate is no longer protection. It is limitation. And you are allowed to step outside it.
Your brain built the maze. But you are not the maze. Step outside it.
Word tour time. 6 key words from today.
Word 1. Disproportionate. Not matching the actual scale or seriousness of the situation. More intense than what is warranted by the real circumstances. Example 1. The fear in the maze is almost always disproportionate, calibrated to worst-case scenarios rather than to the realistic level of actual risk. Example 2. Disproportionate responses to English mistakes, the shame, the avoidance, the decision to stay silent permanently, they cost far more than the mistakes themselves ever could.
Word 2. Anticipatory. Happening in advance of the actual event. Relating to what is imagined before something occurs. Example 1. What if thinking is anticipatory anxiety? Experiencing the emotional response to an imagined negative event as if the event were already occurring. Example 2. Anticipatory English anxiety, the fear that appears before speaking, before the attempt, before any real information exists. It is based on imagination. The real experience is almost always different.
Word 3. Retrospective. Looking back at past events, examining what has already occurred. Example 1. Regret is retrospective analysis, useful in limited doses for learning, damaging when it becomes a permanent residence. Example 2. A retrospective look at your English progress, comparing where you are now to where you were 6 months ago, is one of the most motivating practices available. What you have built is always more than the present moment's anxiety suggests.
Word 4. Calibrated. Adjusted carefully to function within a specific range, set to respond at a particular level of sensitivity. Example 1. The brain's threat detection system is calibrated toward worst case. It overestimates danger as a survival strategy. Example 2. Calibrate your English expectations honestly. What can you reasonably achieve at this level with this amount of consistent practice? Calibrated expectations produce sustainable progress.
Word 5. Simultaneously. At exactly the same time. Occurring together in the same moment. Example 1. Both versions of the life exist simultaneously, the maze and the open road. The question is not which one exists, but which one you are inhabiting. Example 2. Build English simultaneously with building confidence. They are not separate growth tracks. The confidence grows through the English use, and the English use grows through the confidence.
Word 6. Limbic. Relating to the limbic system, the brain structures primarily responsible for emotional responses, fear, and threat detection. Example 1. Naming a difficult emotional state reduces limbic activation. Then naming requires prefrontal engagement, which measurably reduces the emotional intensity. Example 2. When English anxiety activates the limbic response. When the fear is physical and immediate, breathing deliberately before speaking reduces the limbic activation. The body calms. The language flows more naturally.
One thing this week.
Every time you notice yourself in the maze this week, and you will notice it, because you now know what to look for, name the specific pattern.
Out loud if possible. In writing, if you can. Internally, if necessary. But name it specifically.
This is overthinking. This is the regret loop. This is what if catastrophizing. This is disproportionate fear.
And then, return. To one thing that is actually physically present in this moment.
One thing you can see. One physical sensation. One breath.
Here is your sentence template.
I notice I am in the maze, specifically in the name your pattern. Pattern. This pattern was built to protect me. It is no longer serving me here. I am returning to what is actually present. And I am taking one step on the open road by name your action.
Say it out loud. With a real maze pattern. A real return. A real step.
I am in the maze. Name the pattern. I am returning. And my one step is name the action.
Mean every word. And take that one step. Today, comment challenge.
Which of the 4 maze patterns is most active in your life right now? Overthinking, regrets, what-ifs, or fear? And what is one step on the open road you are choosing this week?
Write using this sentence.
The maze pattern most active in my life right now is write your pattern in the comments. And the one open road step I am taking this week is write your step in the comments.
Write it. In English. In the comments.
Because naming the pattern publicly, identifying it clearly, that is already the first step outside it.
We read every comment.
Please give this a like.
New episode every single day on Speak Unstoppable.
Thank you for being here.
You are not the maze.
You are the one who can step outside it.
Step outside.
Bye, everyone.